Alright, so like Brenna said, my name's Alex. I'm a first-year master's student here in the sociology department. So I'm here kind of lecturing to you all today, hopefully because I'll be the Brenna next year. So I study sexual violence and victimization, which is largely what I'll be talking to you all about today, but as it portrays to the media as well as the criminal justice system. Before we go ahead and get started, does anyone have any questions about me, why I'm here, what I do, anything like that? Alright, cool. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so first I just kind of wanted to put this up here and mention that I know sexual violence is difficult for a lot of people to talk about and hear about. So if this applies to you, feel free to leave the classroom. I sent this presentation to Brenna before, but obviously do not leave the classroom for like the entire day because you have stuff going on after this. But if you feel uncomfortable, I'm not going to be offended by any means. Please feel free to do what you need to do. I also listed, I don't know if I'm standing in the way of it, but I also listed OU counseling and psychological services. Whether sexual violence is something that is important and close to you, or you've got other stuff going on in your life, they're a great resource. Thank you. Okay, so just a couple of objectives before we get started. By the end of the lecture, you should be able to identify sex crimes. So this is kind of broad. What I mean by this is not necessarily that you should be able to define them or know their names as they're called, like through the Ohio Revised Code, nothing like that. Just kind of be able to identify them if you hear about them, have a better knowledge and understanding of what it means. You should be able to analyze sexual violence as portrayed in the media and criminal justice system. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is the different ways that we as consumers of knowledge understand sexual violence, and I want you to walk out of here being better consumers of knowledge and have better background information on sexual violence. And then lastly, I'd like for you all to be able to apply your sociological imagination to better understand the issue of sexual violence in contemporary American society. So what we are focusing on today is largely what we see and experience in the United States. So that's the main focus. Any questions before I get started on my material? Alrighty. So we're just going to start with the prevalence of sexual violence here in the U.S. The following statistics, tables, and graphs were all created by RAINN. RAINN is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. They're a great resource if you ever want to learn more about this topic. Like I said, that's where all of the statistics and infographics that I'm using today came from. We're going to start with just some general statistics about the prevalence of this issue and then work towards how it happens and what it looks like to the different races, genders, and age categories. So to start us off, there's a pretty staggering statistic here that every 92 seconds an American is sexually assaulted. So if I were to stand here for roughly a minute and a half, according to the statistics, somebody would be sexually assaulted. And that is staggering. That is a large number of people. That's a very short amount of time. And a reason I think this is so staggering to a lot of people is because when we hear about sexual violence, it's typically, the rare case that shows up on the news or what we see on social media. It's not necessarily something we hear or talk about on a day-to-day basis. So this is an important statistic. It really draws you in to understand the prevalence of this issue. I'm not going to go through and read all of this word for word, but this infographic pretty much breaks it down into different vulnerable populations. Vulnerable populations are those that have a kind of difficult time defending themselves or having their own voices heard for themselves. So we have inmates, children, and then military compared to the general public. And yes, the military is still considered a vulnerable population, especially with sexual violence. One thing I do want to point out and talk about on this slide specifically is the fact that there are a number of different ways that we refer to sexual violence. On this slide alone, there's sexual assault, rape, substantiated or indicated sexual abuse, and then all the way at the bottom, unwanted sexual contact. And like I said, I don't want you all to walk out of this presentation understanding what each of those are and having to know the definitions of them, but it is important to understand that the way we talk about sexual violence and that phrase sexual violence is a pretty big umbrella term with all of these things and more that fall underneath it. Are there any questions about that before I keep going? Oh, and feel free to stop me at any point if you do have questions. I'm totally fine with being interrupted. So I think this statistic isn't really all that impressive to people. We kind of have an understanding that females are more likely to experience this type of violence than are males. But the reason I have it here today is because I want to point out the fact that while this is true, and while we understand it to be true, this is not necessarily like the norm or the standard. Men are affected by sexual violence, and this is shown as a binary, so people who fall outside of the gender binary or are gender fluid, transgender, whatever their identification might be, the one thing I've really learned while studying this is that sexual violence is not biased, it is not prejudiced in any way, it affects all kinds of different people across the globe, and I just really want everyone to take that and be able to apply it as we move forward. Alrighty, so younger people are at the highest risk of sexual violence, as we see here. How many of you fall between the ages of 18 and 34? So almost everybody in this room. That's important, and that's why I'm here talking to you all about it. This is your age category. This is your age group that is most likely to be affected by this. So it's important that we move forward with having a really great understanding of what sexual violence is and how it's dealt with in contemporary American society. All right, this is another slide that I'm going to kind of pause and talk to you all about in a bit more detail. As you can see, this infographic kind of breaks it down by race. And we see this is all of them combined, white, black, Hispanic, and then this other category. So these are pretty massive differences between white people and then people of color and whatever this other category is. Using your sociological imagination, why do you guys think that in what is contemporary American society, we see huge differences among the races in their reporting habits? Because this is what's just reported to law enforcement. Yeah?
A lot of white women are sexualized in the media.
Yeah, totally true. Yeah?
Maybe aren't as afraid to go to the police.
Yeah, absolutely. No? Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so you guys are absolutely right. We as consumers of knowledge need to think about the way that people interact with agencies and institutions like law enforcement and the criminal justice system. And that's going to largely impact the way we come to understand data like this. So as we know right now in the United States, there aren't great relations between Latinx people and law enforcement as well as the Black community and law enforcement. So it's pretty unlikely if I fell into either of those categories that I would feel comfortable reaching out to my law enforcement agency saying, hey, I need help. That's something that we really need to keep in mind as we move forward in understanding this topic. So why is this so important? Obviously, there are a lot of people in the world that aren't necessarily concerned with this topic or don't really care about it, as this graph or the research shows. But we in sociology are constantly trying and fighting to answer this big "so what, who cares" question. So why should you guys care about this? It's not uncommon. As we kind of realized through the last couple of slides, this is a problem that affects a lot of people a lot of the time. It's a huge issue. Second, as all of you showed me, the majority of you fall within this age category. So it's important that you have an understanding of what sexual violence is. Second, or third and fourth rather, it's a really big topic right now, especially in politics and on college campuses. So as you move forward into your day-to-day lives and are maybe having debates or conversations about sexual violence on Ohio University's campus, or just as it relates to politics, it's good to have this background knowledge and be better informed. And like I said, just be better informed and better consumers of knowledge. All right, so one question that I get constantly when I talk to people about the things that I study is why people don't step forward with their stories and why they're so hesitant to report their victimization. And there are a ton of reasons this might be the case. So this hashtag largely became popular during the Ford Kavanaugh case and hearings back in 2018 at the end of the year. I don't know if you guys saw it on Twitter, but I saw it everywhere. So I kind of want to talk about what are some of these reasons why people don't report. Either things that you saw in regards to this hashtag, like you saw people using it on Twitter or using your sociological imagination. What do you guys think?
someone you're close to might not want to get in trouble.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody heard her, but she said that if it's somebody that you're close to that you were attacked or assaulted by, you might not necessarily want to get them in trouble. Yeah. That's okay. Go ahead.
You might have been drinking. Or
Yeah.
under the influence or doing something you usually do.
Right, that's exactly right. For those of you that couldn't hear, she said you may have been doing something that you shouldn't have been doing. Maybe you were under the influence or drinking underage. That's absolutely right. Go ahead.
And it's like their work too.
Yeah, so that's another really hard thing about sexual violence, especially in the criminal justice system. It's hard to have just two sides of the story and no middle ground. Nobody else was there typically, right? Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They might not be believed when they like come out and say it. Like a lot of people didn't believe for it, and then also because she was talking about like a lot of the time they said like, well, she came out like so much later, so.
Right, exactly. The fear of not being believed. Especially because, like what somebody over here was saying, I'm sorry, it is just like potentially his word versus potentially her word. It's hard to just kind of say, yeah, this happened to me, while somebody else is saying, no, it didn't, and potentially not be believed. That happens all the time. Are there any final suggestions? Do you have your hand up? No? Okay, sorry. Go
That
ahead.
could be like some kind of threat on the person that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's typically referred to as fear of retribution. You're afraid of somebody coming back and getting revenge on you for doing that. So another big reason that I've noticed and kind of begun to understand through my research is that this stepping forward is really traumatic. Not only did you live through this really horrible traumatic experience, now you have to go tell someone, kind of rehash that all over again. And then if you decide to move forward with pressing charges or going through a criminal proceeding, then you're constantly doing that for a million different people, and it's really hard. It's really, like I said, traumatic experience. All right, so we're going to talk about sexual violence in the media, and I do have a video. Hopefully it will play. But, and we don't necessarily have to answer all of these questions, but I want you to think about these things as we move forward with the video. How do you think that sexual violence is portrayed in the media? Is it a serious issue? Do people laugh about it? And if there are people laughing, are there only certain people that find it funny? These are things that I want you to think about while you watch this video.
Peter, my God, you look terrible. What happened?
I was raped.
Hey, thanks for helping me out, man. You're a good man. You're a good guy.
You'll never find another love like mine.
I'm flagging down that waiter.
So here's what's going to happen. As of right now, I am reinstated, or I will tell your wife and the entire congregation of the Cornerstone Bible Way Church of our sexual congress.
Oh, slow down, big guy.
I felt her. I was driving.
I know, but there was a roofie in it.
I'm not sure if I'm okay with that.
3, 2, 1.
Party time.
If you haven't had sex in 6 months, you're not accountable for who you sleep with.
How many days do you think he'll last? They're gods. To them, 40 minutes is like an eternity.
They're like animals. Their entire lives revolve around their penises.
I thought you wanted to be with me.
I do. Like a lot. But you haven't given it up to me since the night I knocked you up. Baby, I'm a dude. I have needs.
So nothing happened?
Well, you know, something's happened. We mostly slept.
You mean you were in his bed and he didn't whine and beg for like 2 hours until you were so sick of hearing his stupid voice that you just gave in so he would shut up?
what's about to happen, alright? You about to go run down some drunk chicks, alright? Don't confuse that with tipsy. You talking about drunk. I want vomit in the hair, bruised up knees, broken heels, a plus. That's what you want to know.
Look around. There's got to be 100 drunk girls here, and you should be trying to have sex with every one of them.
Crouch down and bend over a little bit.
Wow, it took 5 shots of tequila to get you in that position.
Be the man. First off, I don't even like her.
Hey,
Hey. Second, get her drunk. Really drunk.
Think about it, Josh. You're in college. The window of opportunity to drink and do drugs and take advantage of young girls is getting smaller by the day.
That's how a tiger know he got to tackle a gazelle. It's code written in his DNA. It says tackle the gazelle.
Okay.
And believe it or not, in every man there's a code written that says tackle drunk bitches.
What a pompous blowhard! Harrigan!
Know it all!
Are you as turned on as I am?
So put your gown back on, get back in bed, and shut the hell up.
No one talks to me that way.
Well, get used to it, Missy.
Take off your pants.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright, so one thing that I do want to point out about this video is that it is pretty targeted towards men as the perpetrator. We know that that's not always the case, right? So I just wanted to point that out, but what do you guys think about that video? Do you think it was honest or maybe misleading? What do you think? No one has any? Alright, yeah.
I think it was interesting because like stuff like this, like in a lot of shows, like usually just like look like kind of
Right. And it is meant to be funny, and like I heard some people giggling, and I watch How I Met Your Mother, and that's somebody's show, and of course you laugh, but that's the point, right? It's shown and portrayed as something that is supposed to be funny and laughable. Maybe this does have an effect on the way that we, as these people watching these shows, interact with the concept of sexual violence. That's the point that we're trying to make here. Does anybody have any last thoughts on that before we move on? Okay. So we're not going to talk about this necessarily, but what about social media? We joke about social media and people use, that exam totally raped me, or whatever the phrases might be. We talk about that on social media all the time, too. Same thing with the news. The only thing that I do want to talk about with the news is the fact that what is seen are these super rare, major, horrific instances of sexual violence, which is true. Those do happen, but what gets lost in that message is the day-to-day harassment and assault that happens on college campuses or in bars across the United States. So it's not always going to be this huge story of a rape case or anything like that. There are things that happen day-to-day that are just as important but aren't seen as newsworthy. Alright, so moving on to the criminal justice system. We know, as a researcher of this, we know a lot about sexual violence in the criminal justice system, but I think this is something that gets lost to a lot of people in the general public, so that's why we're talking about this today. Who here has seen the HBO documentary I Am Evidence? Anybody? Yeah, a few people in the audience have. So, it's a really great documentary. I absolutely recommend watching it if sexual violence is something that you're interested in as a research topic. But this documentary is all about the rape kit backlog. And rape kits are the first step in a criminal proceeding if you want to step forward with sexual assault allegations. So if I were a victim of rape, I might say, okay, I want to go forward with trying to find this person and persecute them. What would happen is I would go to a hospital, and the first thing that would happen is get a rape kit done. A specific nurse would come see me and take all the physical evidence off of my body, collect it, and then send it off to the criminal justice system. And they would take that along with my statement and any other evidence I might have and start their investigation with all of that information and all of that evidence. The organization that is featured in I Am Evidence found was that across the United States there are 400,000 rape kits that have never been opened and never sent to forensics teams to test that evidence. So that means that across the United States, 400,000 people are never getting the justice that they may have deserved. So this is obviously a huge problem, right? 400,000 people are being neglected. 400,000 people are not being seen by the criminal justice system. This picture on the left, I know it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but that picture is a screenshot from I Am Evidence, and it's one of the warehouses that is currently storing some of those rape kits. I like that picture because it kind of shows the magnitude of the issue here. And this happens for a lot of different reasons, right? So as an investigator or a police officer, I have a million things to do with my life, right? I have a ton of cases piling up. My caseload might be too big. This one might not be a priority. Maybe the victim's story isn't adding up. Maybe they're drunk and I don't necessarily believe everything they're saying. There are so many reasons that this happens. But the fact that it happens alone is an issue, and one that needs to be addressed. This isn't necessarily to say that I'm criticizing the criminal justice system or think poorly of it, but it is important to take moments like this and understand that, we can do better and we can be better. All right, so the very last thing that I want to do with you all today is a quick think, pair, share activity. Excuse me. So I don't know if you guys have ever done a think, pair, share, but what this basically is you're going to think about the question that I have here on the board, and then in a minute after that, with the person sitting next to you, talk about it. Then we're going to come back together as a group and discuss what you all thought. So the question is, why does the criminal justice system maybe not prioritize testing rape kits? This could also be, why does the criminal justice system maybe not prioritize cases of sexual violence? Remember, I really want you all to use your sociological imagination and think about it through that lens. Consider the types of victims that we've discussed today, and maybe that'll help you. But yeah, go ahead and take a minute to think about it yourself, and I'll let you guys know when to start talking with your partners. If it works out awkwardly and there are like groups of 3, that's fine as well. Whatever works.
Going on and other things. Just a reminder during this activity, especially, please focus on this activity and have yeah, that's true. Seriously.
Alright, if you guys haven't already, feel free to start talking with your neighbors about this, and then we'll, like I said, we'll come together as a group.
Jail for 6 months, whatever reason.
Alright, so I've heard a lot of the groups that were talking, it's gotten a little bit quieter in here, so we're going to come together and kind of talk about this as a class. So if you could wrap up your conversations, that would be great. So who wants to start us off? What do you guys think? Go ahead.
I thought it would be more of like maybe like male, female, like thing, because with law enforcement and stuff, there's a majority that are male in that like field. So like I feel like between like men and women like police officers, that male police officers would be less likely to like does not have that like empathy or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I can totally see how you might think that. It makes sense to think that maybe a male police officer kind of lacks that empathy, but who else? Yeah.
We said that, like, talking about the type of victims, so if they're, like, a minority previously incarcerated, or, like, couple of lower socioeconomic status, like, they might not be believed as much as someone else.
Yeah, can you tell me a bit more about that? Why do you think that?
Just because, just like there's like a distrust between the criminal justice system and those like
Yeah, and that's a really great point. That's kind of what we talked about, right? So that's that huge difference between the white population that is stepping forward and maybe those people of color and minorities. That's a really great job. Go ahead.
A lot of times there's not as much like hard evidence during sexual assault cases, so even if they have the DNA of the person, they might not be able to match it to someone, so they might feel that prioritizing things like hard evidence, like, oh, we have video footage of this person killing someone.
Yeah.
We really answer that first.
Yeah, that makes sense too, especially since I think, sexual assault doesn't typically happen with a bunch of people watching, whereas other crimes, maybe like a bar fight, you can say, yeah, the whole bar will agree with you that yes, this happened. So it's a good point. I saw a hand near the back. Yeah, go ahead.
I was kind of going to say something similar to that. Like the violent crimes, especially in the news, using like media where rape is viewed as like a common thing on media. So it might not be viewed as serious as some of those crimes.
Yeah, funding is a really great point as well. We don't necessarily think about that when we think about the criminal justice system, especially things like forensics. We think, it's a super expensive industry. They must have all the money in the world, but funding is a really huge problem. That's a great point. Anybody else? All right, well, like I said, my name is Alexandra Monaco. Thank you guys very much for being such a wonderful class. I really appreciate it. If you ever want to learn more about sexual violence or want to talk to me about my research, you're welcome to do so. I left my email, and I'm sure Brenna would be happy to get us in contact as well. But thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it.